DFCS is the largest human trafficker in the state of Georgia. Hundreds of children literally disappear. That's right, disappear each year while in the care of DFCS. That was just one finding of the investigation conducted by U.S. Senator John Ossoff. They also found that children were being warehoused in hotels, often without proper supervision, and that children had even been placed in restraints. Here with us this morning, as it turns out, is one of the child victims. His parents eventually won their fight to get Tori back, along with his siblings. More on that later. Despite a statutory mandate to reunite children with their families, DFCS has also become a discount adoption agency, perhaps the largest adoption agency in Georgia. The Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997 and other budgetary incentives and bureaucratic quirks effectively place a bounty on the heads of children in Georgia suitable for adoption. Adoption is openly used by DFCS as a recruiting tool to find foster families. This creates a perverse system in which foster parents actively work with DFCS against reunification of children with their biological parents. Where impediments exist to adoption, typically parents fighting for the return of their children, DFCS offers the next best thing: indefinite, quote-unquote, temporary guardianship with state subsidy. Caseworkers and adoption-minded foster families have been known to work in tandem to alienate children from their parents and from their extended families. In one case, for example, the caseworker casually disclosed to the child that they had been adopted, and the parents that had raised her were not really her parents at all. In another case, children were told that they were born to toxic parents. Parents are prohibited from discussing details of DFCS cases with their children during visits, but caseworkers and foster families, as a practical matter, are free to trash their parents 24/7. Despite their statutory mission, DFCS frustrates placement of children with family members, obstructs visitation and reunification, lies to children about what is going on with their parents, manipulates children against their parents, and when necessary, tells outright lies to the parents and court about what these children really want. DFCS personnel brag to parents how, quote-unquote, close they are with judges, and how counselors and experts will do whatever DFCS says because DFCS pays their bills. Much like the Borg, the collective antagonists of the Star Trek series, DFCS tells parents that resistance is futile. And they are right. The numbers tell the tale. Parents know that few children taken in Georgia from their parents in Camden County ever return home. In 2022, only one child in 10 taken from their parents was returned home. How big is the adoption bounty for DFCS? It was over $100 million last year. In other words, the more adoptions DFCS facilitates, the more money their agency receives from the federal government. Taking children from parents is good business. Reunification does not pay, nor do remedial measures that fall short of removing children from their parents pay. Follow the money. While bureaucrats at DFCS pad their budget through adoption and the foster care process, parents who fight for the return of their children are hounded relentlessly, face arrest, and often lose everything. An endless series of classes, court dates, evaluations, tests, workday visitations, and other events make it nearly impossible for parents to maintain employment through the years-long struggle necessary to get back their children. If they acknowledge the understandable emotional toll of this process, then DFCS uses that against them too. Lawyers are expensive, yet parents are required to pay support that goes to the state of Georgia into a fund rather than to the actual foster parents. Nobody even tracks the number of parents that commit suicide every year due to DFCS tyranny. Families are worn down, beaten into submission. One family beaten down in that process and present here today is the Somerset family. They literally lost everything in their lengthy but ultimately successful fight for the return of their children. As we speak, they are literally living out of hotel rooms. The toughest cases, sometimes referred to as medical kidnapping, in which parents are presumed guilty, involve battles of so-called experts over possible causes of unexplained injuries to children. Typically, these cases involve children born prematurely, often due to fetal growth restriction and other medical complications, born to families with a history of nutrient deficiency, OI, EDS, and other genetic conditions which impact bone fragility. DFCS intentionally employs experts of questionable reliability and, where possible, withholds information about the backgrounds of their experts. If a family hires one expert in their defense, DFCS hires two. If a family hires a second expert for their defense, DFCS hires two more against them. DFCS actively thwarts the investigation into truths that do not fit their narrative, often refusing to submit the child for appropriate medical testing without court order to compel it. Families who choose to fight for their children must be prepared for a fight that will drag on for years, a fight that will typically exceed $100,000 in costs for attorneys and experts. Two fathers here today with their families to speak with you about their experiences. Now, you're probably wondering what kind of people would do such evil things. Where does DFCS find such people? What does DFCS hire? Among the many good people working for DFCS are, for example, Donnell Hill. Last month, this DFCS employee was arrested for aggravated sodomy. He was recently released on a $100,000 bond, under an at least implied threat of taking a child away from a mother, supposedly under investigation by DFCS. Mr. Hill reportedly admitted to engaging in a sexual act with the child's mother. Under such circumstances, how could a woman give meaningful consent to performing a sexual act? I'm calling on our legislature to amend OCGA Section 16-6-5.1, the statute originally designed to address those in custody from sexual assault by prison guards and others, to extend that statute's protection to guardians of children in the care, custody, and control of DFCS, are under active investigation by DFCS to remove consent as a defense to sexual assault by DFCS personnel. Another DFCS worker without legal authority demanded that a caregiver, someone not accused of any crime or misconduct, allow the worker to observe the woman peeing into a container for a urine sample. The DFCS worker actually shined a light on the woman's genitalia so that the worker could get a better view of her private parts. This should also be a crime. Another DFCS worker in Camden County, Unique Sanchez-Cohen, was recently arrested for DUI. And then we have DFCS caseworker John Peterson, with whom many of the families present here are familiar. He recently returned to working with children, despite multiple complaints having been made by several families against him over the past year. There have been reports that parents and others perceived, felt, or believed Mr. Peterson to be acting in creepy or grooming behaviors on his part towards children. Whether that's grooming or not may be a matter of opinion. But parents, caregivers, and others have reported that he kisses children in DFCS care, custody, and control, on the head, face, and possibly the lips. He hugs children inappropriately. He has them sit in his lap. One female child actually placed her head in his lap. And DFCS is aware of video documentation of many of these incidents. Mr. Peterson often asks if he can take children to go fishing or for other activities, and is believed to have actually taken at least one child on a private visit. Now, why a DFCS caseworker needs to go have an adventure with a small child defies human understanding. Mr. Peterson also gave access to children to a personal digital device with a browser history reflecting a visit to what purported to be a pornographic website. Whether this was a private digital device or state property makes this incident no less disturbing.